After the zombie apocalypse, Molly and her boyfriend, Nick, drive through the Nevada desert, escaping the burning Las Vegas. Nick knows a guy named Jimmy, who will meet them at an airfield and take them to Mexico, hoping to reach a safer, zombie-free zone. On the way, Molly snorts some nose candy and drinks vodka, feeling exhausted from constantly running. Overwhelmed, she suddenly gets sick, forcing Nick to pull over so she can throw up. Afterward, she returns to the car, and Nick firmly warns her not to make him stop again since they're only 30 miles away. However, as he restarts the car, one of the wheels gets stuck in the sand. Nick only makes it worse by trying to drive forward. Frustrated, they start blaming each other. Nick manages to get a phone signal and calls Jimmy for help, but the call cuts off when the signal drops. Just then, Molly spots a lone man walking toward them. Realizing it's a zombie in a suit, Nick rushes back to the car, grabs his gun, and aims at the undead. In the chaos, his phone drops to the ground unnoticed. Nick fires 3 shots, taking the zombie down. The two celebrate briefly until the zombie suddenly gets back up and moves toward them. Nick tries to shoot its head, but misses. As the gun runs out of bullets, they're forced to hide in the car, hoping the zombie will eventually lose interest. They wait until dawn, but the zombie remains outside, growling at the window. While Molly blames Nick for dropping the phone, they suddenly realize the zombie is gone. They turn on the headlights to check, but it's still too dark. Molly grabs a flashlight and looks around, hoping the stubborn undead has finally given up. Deciding to retrieve the phone together, they step out of the car. Just as Molly picks it up, Nick is suddenly attacked from behind. The zombie tears him apart and devours him. Panicked, Molly grabs whatever supplies she can from the car and flees into the night before the zombie comes after her. Running through the dark desert, she clutches her flashlight, desperate to escape. By morning, she tries calling Jimmy to let him know she'll be late. Annoyed, he hangs up, making no promise to wait for her. Checking the map, she realizes she has to walk over 30 miles north to reach the airfield. While walking, she realizes it's her time of the month but luckily finds her last tampon. With just a few bottles of water, vodka, a lighter, some powder, and cigarettes, she continues her journey. A little later, she sees 2 aircraft flying overhead, probably Jimmy and his team. Desperate, she takes more candy before following the map, now uncertain about her direction. At night, she sits by a fire and thinks about her son, Chase. Just as she starts dozing off, the zombie appears again and attacks. She barely escapes, climbing onto a nearby rock, where she's forced to spend the night. At dawn, the zombie wakes her up. It hasn't given up on her. Desperate, she tries to distract it by tossing a wooden stick like it's a dog, but it doesn't react. Then, she pulls out her used tampon and throws it. The zombie immediately goes for it, giving her a chance to run. Under the scorching sun, Molly keeps moving toward the airfield, but the zombie continues to follow. Oddly enough, it doesn't attack her. It just lumbers behind her. Over time, she gets used to its presence. At least, she's not completely alone. Muttering to herself, she keeps moving. After walking for hours in the heat and drinking most of her water, Molly becomes exhausted. She finds an abandoned house and decides to stay there for the night, temporarily losing the zombie. She smokes her last cigarette and falls asleep in peace. But soon, she wakes up to noises. It's the same zombie. It never gave up. Hiding in the bathtub, she manages to avoid it once again. The relief doesn't last. The zombie finds her again. Frustrated, she throws rocks at it, yelling for it to leave her alone. But it never listens. With no other choice, she accepts its presence and even gives it a name, Smalls. It's a joke about the disappointing sizes of men she's encountered in her life. At least Smalls doesn't talk back. As they walk, she talks to Smalls about the magical white powder that keeps her full without food. That night, sitting by the fire, she reminisces about her past as a stripper, a memory that still haunts her. Sipping vodka, she grows angry at those who judged her back then. Still, the only one Molly can blame is Smalls, though he has no idea what she's grumbling about. The next morning, she gets a final warning from Jimmy. He's leaving tomorrow morning, whether she makes it or not. At this point, Molly has run out of water, and her skin is sunburned and dehydrated after days of exposure. Suddenly, strong winds pick up, lifting sand and dust into the air. Molly realizes it's a dust storm and tries to run, but both she and Smalls are quickly swallowed by it. When Molly regains consciousness, she spots a car approaching. Desperate, she calls out for help. Luckily, 2 men see her and pull over. They give her water and help her into the car. This is where we meet Ted and Jason, who seem like two helpful gentlemen. Molly, exhausted and grateful, sits in the car, enjoying the AC while the men go back to look for her lost bag. As she waits, she notices a photo of a father and son. The boy's hat looks just like Jason's. Then, she spots a bloodstained bag. A terrible realization hits her. These men are murderers, and the car must belong to their victims. When Ted and Jason return, they ask about the airfield. Molly cautiously gives vague answers, trying to stay safe. But suddenly, Jason attacks her from behind, suffocating her with a plastic bag, while Ted threatens her for more details. Even after giving them everything, they refuse to let her go, despite already being injured. Just then, Smalls rises from the sand, drawn by her cries for help. He lunges at Ted, biting his neck and tearing him apart while Jason panics and flees in the car. Molly, caught between hallucinations and despair, realizes Smalls has just saved her life, but instead of feeling grateful, she's disgusted and numb. After pulling herself together, she collects supplies from Jason's abandoned car, finding an inflatable boat and some bottles of water. She drags the boat along, stumbling through the harsh desert, exhausted from everything she's endured. But when Smalls approaches, she decides to stop feeling sorry for herself. Maybe with his help, she really can make it to the airfield. At least Smalls can't talk, making it easier to move on from everything that's happened. As they pass a junkyard, Molly ties a tire around Smalls' neck, making him carry her boat and water. Smalls isn't going anywhere, he'll always stick with Molly. As they continue their journey, Molly opens up about her sister, who couldn't have children. Since Molly was too young and reckless to be a mother, she let her sister raise her son, Chase. She admits it was the right decision. She could barely take care of herself, let alone a child. At this point, Molly starts seeing Smalls less as a monster and more like a persistent puppy following a kid home from school. She decides to train him, making it clear that if he doesn't listen, she'll leave him behind. Smalls quickly learns to obey. Eventually, they reach the highway, just a few miles away from Jimmy's location. Along the way, Molly spots military tanks rushing toward them. Knowing they'll shoot any walking corpse on sight, she quickly hides Smalls. The soldiers confront Molly, suspecting she's infected. She insists she's clean and claims she's heading to see her husband at a nearby airbase. But then Smalls appears. The soldiers mistake him for her infected husband. Molly begs them not to kill him, and they hesitate, until one of them suddenly shoots Smalls in the leg, triggering his aggression. As Molly tries to calm him, he bites her finger. Panicking, Molly has no choice but to chop off her bleeding finger with a rock to stop the infection. Despite her injury, she carries the wounded Smalls along. Finally, she sees the airfield ahead, but Smalls is too weak to go any further. Molly thanks him for sticking with her, then ends his suffering with a heavy rock. Smalls is gone. At last, Molly reunites with Jimmy and his team. Before they fly to Mexico, she makes a final call to her sister to say goodbye to Chase. But when Chase answers, he's terrified. He tells Molly that everyone left him. Her heart sinks. Her sister must have been infected or killed, and Chase has been alone for days. Realizing she can't leave him behind, Molly abandons her plan to escape. She fights off several zombies at the airfield and snatches a car key from one of them. Without hesitation, she speeds back toward Las Vegas to rescue her son. When she arrives, the city is completely deserted. Armed with a shovel, she enters her sister's house, ready to fight. Inside, she confirms her worst fears. Her sister and brother-in-law are dead. Then, she finally finds Chase, hiding inside a small indoor tent. The moment she sees him, she rushes over and embraces him. It's her first real chance to earn his trust. But there's no time to waste. As they step outside, a pack of zombies blocks their path. Molly grips her shovel tightly and tells Chase to stay behind her, no matter what. Then, without hesitation, she charges at the undead. So that's it. Hope you enjoy the story. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more videos.